My fiancé told me. Call off the honeymoon. My ex needs me that week for emotional support. I said, that's fine. It's already canceled. Along with the wedding, the venue, and our entire relationship. My name is Daniel. I am 32 and I work in commercial property management in a mid-sized city in the Midwest. My job is structured and predictable, mostly budgets, maintenance schedules, and tenant negotiations. I keep a steady routine. Early mornings, gym before work, evenings at home reviewing contracts or cooking. I am not impulsive by nature, and I do not make major decisions without planning. My fiancée is Lauren. She is 30 and works in marketing for a regional healthcare company. We have been together for 3 years and engaged for 8 months. We do not own a house yet, but we signed a lease together last spring and share all expenses evenly. The wedding was scheduled for late September, and the honeymoon was booked for the week immediately after. Lauren is outgoing and blunt. That was something I initially appreciated because I tend to be more reserved. Over time, blunt shifted into something sharper. She prides herself on being honest, but often that honesty lands as criticism. She corrects waiters, argues with customer service on speakerphone, and has no issue telling friends that their life choices are inefficient. I learned to filter it out when it was directed at other people. It became harder when it was directed at me. To be clear, there were no obvious red flags about cheating or secret meetings. The issue has always been boundaries, specifically with her ex, Marcus. They dated for 4 years before me and broke up about a year before we met. According to her, they ended because he was emotionally unstable and resistant to commitment. She framed it as her outgrowing him. From the beginning, she insisted they were still friends because she felt responsible for his mental health. I told her I was not comfortable with constant one-on-one dinners or late-night phone calls. She said I was being insecure and that adults should be able to maintain mature friendships. I did not argue endlessly. I set a clear boundary that I was fine with occasional contact, but not emotional dependency. For the most part, she adjusted. Or at least I thought she did. The wedding planning was not fun, but it was manageable. I handled the practical stuff, deposits, hotel blocks, timelines, because that is how my brain works. Lauren handled aesthetics and social politics, which mostly meant picking fights with vendors and then telling me I was lucky she had standards. If a florist did not respond in an hour, she would send a follow-up that sounded like a performance review. If I suggested we let something go, she would say I loved mediocrity and that she refused to have a mediocre life. The only part one pushed back on early was Marcus being anywhere near the wedding. She did not ask to invite him, but she kept mentioning how awkward it would be if he found out later and felt abandoned. That was her favorite word for him, abandoned, like he was a stray dog she fed once and now had a permanent claim on her time. I told her I did not want him involved at all. She rolled her eyes and said I was threatened by a guy who could not even hold a relationship together. 2 months ago, we had our first serious argument about it. I came home from work and she was in the kitchen on FaceTime with him. Not a quick call. It had been going long enough that she was barefoot, wine poured, leaning on the counter, doing the soft voice she rarely uses with me. When she saw me, she turned the phone away like a teenager hiding something. I waited until she hung up. I asked what was going on. She shrugged and said he was spiraling again and that she was the only person who understood him. I told her I understood helping a friend, but I did not understand why it had to be private and why it always happened at night. She said because he had a job and because I make everything weird. I did not raise my voice. I told her my boundary again. No secret emotional partner stuff. No late-night therapy sessions. No acting like his stability was her responsibility. She laughed, actually laughed, and said it was cute that I thought I could manage her relationships like a project. Then she said something that stuck with me. If you cannot handle me caring about people, you should not marry me. I went to bed that night feeling like the conversation had ended, but the problem had not. The next shift happened about 3 weeks before the wedding. Most deposits were already paid. The venue was secured, catering locked in, photographer contracted. We were past the point where canceling would mean losing money. I am aware that this sounds relevant because it is. Lauren started mentioning Marcus more frequently again. Not in a dramatic way, just small insertions into normal conversations. She would say he was having a hard month. She would mention that his birthday was coming up and that he hated celebrating alone. She said he still struggled with feeling left behind. I listened, but I did not engage. I had already drawn my line. If she wanted to help him in reasonable ways, fine. I was not going to police casual check-ins. What I was watching for was dependency. The real moment came on a Sunday afternoon. We were at our apartment, sitting at the dining table reviewing final numbers for the honeymoon. We had booked 10 days overseas. Flights were paid. Hotels were non-refundable at that stage. I was going over the travel insurance details when she said she needed to talk to me about something. Her tone was calm, almost clinical. That is usually how she frames things when she expects resistance. She said Marcus had recently gone through a breakup. Apparently, the woman he had been seeing left him abruptly. Lauren said he was not handling it well and had reached out to her for support. I asked what that meant in practical terms. She said he wanted her physically present for a few days because he felt isolated. I asked when. She said the week of our honeymoon. She did not look embarrassed. She looked annoyed that I was not immediately understanding. She said it would only be for part of the week and that we could reschedule the trip. She reminded me that marriage was about flexibility and compassion. Then she said something that clarified everything for me. He needs me that week. The honeymoon can wait. I remember feeling very still. Not angry. Not loud. Just clear. Because in that sentence she had ranked priorities. And I was not first. The next morning I canceled everything. I did not threaten it. I did not announce it. I woke up at 6 like usual, made coffee, opened my laptop, and started with the venue. The contract allowed cancellation with forfeiture of the deposit. I accepted that loss. Then catering. Then the photographer. Then the airline credits, which at least gave partial value for future travel. The honeymoon hotels were non-refundable, but that was the cost of clarity. By 9:30, the wedding was functionally over. Lauren was still asleep when I finished sending the final confirmation emails. I transferred my half of the remaining joint wedding fund back into my personal account and left a detailed spreadsheet outlining every cancellation fee and remaining balance. No theatrics, just math. When she woke up, she found me at the dining table again. Same place as the conversation the day before. She immediately started where she had left off. She said she had been thinking and that we needed to call off the honeymoon because Marcus needed her that week for emotional support. She framed it as temporary. She said we could push the trip back a few months once he stabilized. She said I was supposed to be secure enough to understand that her loyalty to people does not disappear just because she is getting married. I let her finish. Then I told her that was fine. The honeymoon was already canceled. She blinked like she misheard me. I added that the venue was canceled. The vendors were canceled. The officiant was canceled. There was no wedding to reschedule. Her face shifted from confusion to anger in under 5 seconds. She asked what I meant. I told her clearly that I had taken her priorities seriously. If her ex required physical presence during the 1 week that was supposed to mark the start of our marriage, then we were not aligned enough to marry. She accused me of being dramatic. She said I had no right to make unilateral decisions. I told her I agreed, which is why I was not asking permission to end a relationship where I ranked second. For the first time since I met her, she did not have a quick comeback. The relationship ended that same morning. There was no dramatic screaming match. Lauren escalated quickly, but I did not follow her there. She moved from accusing me of overreacting to accusing me of trying to punish her. She said canceling everything without a joint discussion proved I was controlling. I let her talk. Then I walked her through the logic. I reminded her that I had clearly stated my boundary months ago. No emotional dependency with Marcus. No positioning herself as his primary support. I reminded her of the FaceTime calls, the private conversations, the way she dismissed my discomfort as insecurity. I told her this was not about 1 week. It was about priority. She said I was twisting it. She insisted that helping someone in crisis did not mean she loved him. I told her I believed that. I did not think she was secretly in love with him. I thought she needed to feel indispensable to him, and that need outweighed respect for our relationship. That is when she shifted tactics. She said fine, she would tell him she could not come. She said she would cut back contact if that is what it took. She said I was blowing up a future over something fixable. I asked her one direct question. If I had not canceled anything this morning, would you have still planned to go to him that week? She hesitated. It was not a long pause, maybe 2 seconds, but it was enough. She finally said yes, because he asked first, and because she did not think I would actually leave over it. That was the moment the engagement ring came off. I did not snatch it. I did not demand it. I simply told her that we were not getting married and that I would not stay in a relationship where my presence was negotiable. I explained that I had already contacted the leasing office to ask about early termination options or transferring the lease solely to one of us. I would cover the penalty if needed. Clean exit. She called me cold. She said I was proving her point that I lack emotional depth. I told her I prefer stability over chaos. By noon, we were no longer a couple. I moved out within 4 days. The lease was in both our names, but the leasing office confirmed we could terminate early with a penalty equal to 2 months' rent. I offered to cover the full penalty myself. I did that deliberately so there would be no financial entanglement or leverage later. Lauren argued that I was being extreme and that we could just coexist until the lease ended. I declined. Living together after a broken engagement would only create more friction. I took a week off work. I packed methodically. Furniture we bought jointly was listed and sold, and the money was split evenly. Items one of us purchased individually stayed with that person. I documented everything with photos and simple written confirmation so there would be no dispute later. It was not emotional. It was administrative. Lauren shifted between anger and negotiation. One evening she tried to soften her tone and said we were throwing away 3 good years over pride. I corrected her. We were ending it over alignment. She said I was incapable of compromise. I told her compromise does not apply to being second place in your own marriage. On the 4th day, I signed a short-term rental across town. Smaller place, month to month. I hired movers for the larger items and left the keys with the leasing office after a final walkthrough. I sent Lauren a brief message confirming utilities were closed and the security deposit disposition would be mailed to her. Then I blocked her number. I also blocked her on social media. Not to be dramatic. To prevent the slow bleed of half conversations and late night just checking in messages. I informed close friends and family that the wedding was canceled and that I would not be discussing details beyond saying we were not compatible. The silence afterward was immediate. For the first time in months, there were no notifications about Marcus, no tense conversations about boundaries, no feeling of competing with a ghost from her past. Just a quiet apartment and a very clear line. I did not feel devastated. I felt resolved, and that surprised me the most. About a week after I moved out, the messages started coming through other channels. Since I had blocked her number and social media, Lauren switched to email. The first one was short and sharp. She accused me of humiliating her in front of family and friends by canceling everything without warning. She said people were asking questions she should not have to answer. I read it once and did not respond. Then came a longer one. She wrote that Marcus had stabilized and that she had told him she could not be his primary support anymore. She framed it as growth. She said the crisis had clarified things for her and that she realized she wanted a future with me, not him. She suggested we meet in person to talk like adults instead of acting like strangers. I considered whether I owed her a conversation. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I wanted to be certain I was not reacting out of ego. So I reviewed the timeline calmly. She had planned to cancel our honeymoon to be physically present for her ex. She admitted she would have gone if I had not acted first. Her default assumption was that I would stay regardless. That was not a temporary lapse. That was her understanding of the power dynamic. I replied once. I kept it brief. I told her I did not question her intentions. I questioned her priorities. I explained that I was not interested in rebuilding trust where I had to compete for basic positioning in my own relationship. I wished her well and asked her not to contact me again unless it related to final financial paperwork. She responded within minutes. This time the tone was different. Less sharp, more frustrated. She said I was rewriting history to make myself the victim. She said real relationships require flexibility. She said my rigidity would leave me alone long term. I did not engage. 2 days later, she showed up at my new place. Not aggressively. She knocked. I did not open the door. I told her through it that this was not appropriate, and that if she returned again uninvited, I would consider it harassment. I did not raise my voice. I simply stated the boundary. She left. After that, the emails stopped. The quiet returned. The fallout spread beyond just us. Within 2 weeks, mutual friends began reaching out. Not aggressively, but carefully. A couple of them had been told a version of the story that painted me as impulsive. According to Lauren, I panicked over a minor scheduling conflict and overreacted instead of communicating. I expected that. Reputation management has always been one of her strengths. I did not counterattack. When asked directly, I gave a simple explanation. She prioritized being physically present for her ex during our honeymoon week. I did not view that as compatible with marriage. I ended it. Most people went quiet after that. The facts did not require embellishment. One of her friends attempted to mediate. She called and suggested that Lauren had always been the caretaker type and that I must have known that going in. I agreed that I knew she liked being needed. What I did not agree to was being secondary to a former partner in the first week of our marriage. There is a difference between compassion and misaligned loyalty. Through mutual circles, I learned that Lauren did spend that honeymoon week with Marcus. Not in some romantic getaway scenario, just at his apartment. Groceries, late-night talks, the whole supportive presence she had described. When I heard that, I did not feel jealous. I felt confirmed. Because if she truly believed our engagement was salvageable, she would have created distance immediately. Instead, she stepped fully into the role she had defended. Around that time, she attempted one last indirect contact. She sent a package to my office with a few items I had forgotten in the apartment and a short handwritten note. No insults this time. No defensiveness. Just a statement that she hoped one day I would understand that love is not a competition. I did not respond. I returned the note to the envelope and filed it with the rest of the paperwork from the canceled wedding. Not out of bitterness. Out of closure. I treat endings the same way I treat contracts. Once terminated, they are archived, not reopened. The strangest part is how quickly my routine stabilized. Work, gym, evenings at home. The drama was gone. And with it, the constant negotiation for position. For the first time in a long while, I did not feel like I was sharing my future with someone who still belonged to her past. About a month after everything ended, I ran into Lauren at a mutual friend's engagement party. I debated not going, but avoiding public spaces indefinitely felt unnecessary. I was not hiding. I arrived, congratulated the couple, and kept conversation surface level. For most of the evening, Lauren stayed on the opposite side of the room. She looked composed, confident even. If someone did not know the timeline, they would not have guessed anything significant had happened. Eventually, she approached. Not dramatically, just direct eye contact and a simple statement that we should clear the air. I agreed to step outside for a few minutes. Public setting. Controlled environment. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She told me Marcus had started dating someone new and was doing better. There was a tone underneath that, something almost resentful. She said she realized she had overextended herself for him for years and that I was the only person who had ever called her out on it. I listened. Then she said something interesting. She said she had expected me to fight harder, to argue more, to try to win her back from her own instincts. She framed my decisiveness as abandonment. According to her, love means pushing through someone's worst tendencies, not stepping away from them. I told her calmly that I am not interested in raising a partner. I am interested in building with one. I did not leave because she cared about someone. I left because she made it clear I was negotiable. She asked if there was any version of events where I would reconsider. I answered honestly, no, not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, but because once I saw how she ranked priorities under pressure, I believed her. She looked frustrated, but not surprised. I think part of her knew that I was not bluffing the morning I canceled everything. We walked back inside separately. I stayed another hour, then left without saying goodbye to her. That was the last time we spoke. It has been 8 months since I canceled the honeymoon, the wedding, and the relationship in the same morning. From a logistical standpoint, the consequences were straightforward. I lost some deposits. I moved twice in 1 year. I had to explain to extended family why invitations were rescinded. None of that was pleasant, but all of it was manageable. Money can be earned back. Reputation stabilizes when you stay consistent. What stayed with me longer was the clarity of that moment at the table. When Lauren said he needs me that week, she expected negotiation. She expected compromise. She expected me to adjust around her sense of obligation. What she did not expect was that I would take her statement at face value and make a decision accordingly. I do not think she was a villain. She was not secretly plotting to run back to her ex. She genuinely believes that being indispensable is proof of love. The problem is that she wants to be indispensable to everyone at the same time. That sounds generous on the surface, but in practice it creates instability. Someone always ends up second. I refuse to be that someone. Since then, I have dated casually but slowly. I am more attentive to how someone handles boundaries, not just with exes, but with work, friends, and family. When conflict arises, I pay attention to who gets prioritized under pressure. Words are flexible. Actions are not. Occasionally I hear updates about Lauren through mutual acquaintances. Nothing dramatic. She moved apartments. She changed jobs. Marcus is no longer a daily topic, which is ironic. I do not feel anger when I hear her name. I feel distance. If I had waited, argued longer, or tried to outcompete her past, we might have made it to the wedding. And then I would have been legally and financially tied to someone who viewed my position as adjustable. Canceling everything in one morning looked extreme from the outside. From the inside, it felt proportional. Sometimes the cleanest decision is the one that leaves no room for reinterpretation later.